Namo Sakyamuni Buddhaya. Dear Thai, dear Sangha. Today is Wednesday, June 6, 2018. We are on the 6th day of the 21-day retreat. And we are in the Endowment with Compassion Temple, New Hamlet. Life is a process. It's a kind of a random process. And we should go with life as it flows, which gives me a good excuse to tell the story. We have been questioning ourselves how our life turned out to be. Can we plan it? Who is the planner? Who is the receiver? Can we make it happen certain way that we like? The topic of today is skillful means in adopting non-Buddhist teachings and practices. In early Buddhism time and in current time. We have known that there are several traditions that were not Buddhist, were adapted into practice of Buddhism during the Buddha's time. Some of them were quite well known. The Brahma Vihara, the practice of four immeasurable minds, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. It was said those teachings exist before or were practiced in other traditions. So Buddhism also practiced them. But when they were practiced, it brings peace and happiness that were compared that like the practitioners were in Brahma realms. That's what they call Brahma Viharas. Vihara is a dwelling. Brahman is a place. Brahma is a god. So when we practice the four immeasurable minds, we can dwell in the peace and happiness of the Brahma. So we say that so it was practiced by other traditions and Buddhism also accepted. We need to realize that Buddhism is made up of non-Buddhist elements. When the Buddha were making the discovery of Four Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path Mindfulness, no self, the teaching of no self happened because of the belief of a self. So self and no self coexist. So can we say there is no such thing that we conventionally call as a self, which is impermanent and independent of other things? Instead of saying there is no such thing as a self, which is permanent and independent, can we say there is such thing as a self, conventionally called as a self, which is impermanent and interdependent with others? That's what we are conventionally live in this world. That's why we have Brother Phap Kham, Sister Tao Nghiêm, Thầy. But Thầy is a constantly changing and interdependent entity. what is reborn and who is reborn. When we talk about rebirth, it means something that the same and being reborn and reborn again. But in Buddhism, we call it manifestation. It's something that been manifested, continually manifested. Phap Kham as an 8-year-old boy is different than what it is now. That's what we can say. Or we can say that it's not different from what he was before. And the one he was before is not different from what he is now. But it still have a name, Phap Kham. As a boy, 8-year-old boy, I still have that name. 50-something years old now, I still have that name. 85, even after I die, I still have that name. So something that gives rebirth, reborn, is what they call a name and form. So when we talk about Thay, if you met Thay 30 years ago, and that's the last time you met him, he has the name Thich Nhat Hanh, but the form that you have was a younger monk at that time. So that name and form come up to you, and so he will reborn in your mind, that image. But I met Thay 3 months ago. He still has that name, but his form is different. So what come up in me, still a form, but different from Thay that I met 31 years ago. So what being reborn is a name and a form. Nama Rupa. When I was 6 years old, I was born in a small village. I don't want you to look at the computer, so I want to look at me. So I have this note. And do you have this controller for the screen, for the machine? When I was 6 years old, I was born in a small village. Maybe I need some tissues. I was born in a small village, and it was during the Vietnam War. I saw fighting. Artillery come in, because it was a small village, so people can come, and the guerrilla have control. They can come in at night, took away people and kill. So I saw homes being damaged by artillery. And at 6 years old, in the morning, I walk around. I look to this home. Oh, it's been damaged. I saw a body. The body is here, the leg is there, and this and that. So I know the effect of war. And there was fighting, and the guerrillas, mostly they are villagers. And the people, the soldiers from the south, after they killed the guerrillas, they just left the body there. So people can just come and take a look. I did not go to take that look at the bodies, but I know they are villagers. Maybe someone that my parents know. And at 8 years old, I was sent to a boarding school, Catholic boarding school. It was a custom that at that time I was quite in a well-off family. So the tradition was to send the school there to the school so that the Catholic priest can take care of the education. And I was given chance to go home once a month. One time I was 8 years old, I was in the yard, standing at one end of the yard. Someone spoke over there. I can use this. And I walked from one end to the other end, straight forward. Then I stopped. I turn back and I say, what happened if I return to that place and walk in a zigzag way and see how my life would turn out to be? Could be different if I walk in a zigzag way. And that happened when I was 8 years old. I didn't know anything, maybe just a game, but it came up in my mind. One time I came back home to visit my family, and the road was kind of damaged by the floods, and they were fighting, so I could not cross to the other side, so I had to walk. So I stay with my elder brother, 1 year older. So we walk over, and when we went over there, my whole family come and greet us. It was very cold, and they gave us popcorns, hot popcorns in the cold days, with the parents, the family. That's your peace and happiness. Regardless of what happened inside, outside. You have a family, you have people to take care of you. That's where your peace and happiness is. You have people who love you. But that left an effect, because I say that if it happened again, I would not be able to see my families. So, and one day, I also walked to the market. There was a young man, a gorilla who was killed, and he just lay down there. And it left an impact on me. So on that night, I returned and I started to pray. I put out a new set of clothes at night, and I say, and I was afraid that the fighting will happen, so I actually, there's this bed quite high, I put it in my good clothes and I dug underneath. And I say, I try my hand. It was a Catholic school, so I learned about God, Christ. I am also from Buddhist, so Buddha. I also read story about heavenly God. So I say, dear God, dear Buddha, dear Christ, please do not make. I want to come to visit my family. Do not make the road be damaged, so I can see my family. But I say that if I say only for me, it was so selfish. So I say, please help end the war. So that, and then I slept. I did that for a few months, but then after that, I think I got tired of it, or the war did not end or something, so I stopped. But what it says was, when I'm praying, I'm with myself. I'm in the moment of prayer, and I have peace. Mindfulness of praying. Be in the present moment. Things happen. 1975, I was South Vietnam fell, and I was set to leave 20 days before it actually fell. But my parents said I was supposed to go with my elder brother, but he said that you are young, only 11 years old, and we would come later. So why don't you wait and go with us? And so my elder brother went first. I stayed, and I stuck in Vietnam for 3 years with my families. So if I went to America earlier, I would be 11 years old, or 14 years old. And then I stayed in Vietnam for 3 years. And during those 3 years, I got in touch with life under the communist rule. And it has shaped my life. I get to know people who are under difficult situations that still have each other, supporting each other, even living during a time of suspicious and hardship. Later on, when I grow up, I would not trade those 3 years for anything. Even a place in heaven, I would not trade for that. I found happiness, I found life in those difficult situations. I found connections. When I was 17, I went on the trip. I went out by boat, the boat people. The ship went to Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Brunei, Hong Kong, the Philippines. Finally, our ship landed in the Philippines. Come to the United States, study, become an engineer. I was an electrical engineer. That's why you see a table and this and that. And I have a fight with my boss. I was not happy with him, so I have to find some way to deal with my anger. So I volunteered to teach in a children's school, teaching Vietnamese language and culture. And there I met a girl. Become friends, having some affections and this and that. In Vietnamese, girlfriends and friends who are girl are different. Bạn gái. But of course we have some kind of affection for each other. At one time I have a fight with my boss so much that next time I did not have to, if I go to work, the fight will erupt. So I did not go to work, but have a date the next day. And I could not cancel it. And so my anger will pour into that. After that, I say I could not do like this. I have to find some way to control my anger. So I come to Plum Village. 87. 1 year, I saw Sister Chung Đức there at the time. I go asking why my life is happening like this. What bring me into this and to that? That questions were asked when I was 8. So one day in Low Hamlet, a group of us were sitting around singing songs, Vietnamese song. Then the song Uyên Nguyên was sung. I was there listening, singing together, and then it's come to the word. Đâu là Uyên Nguyên, đâu là quý xứ? Where is the first beginning? And where is the end? I smile. That's how where I found out the questions of why things happen, why it's like this, like that. Why I smile? Because it just say, this is this, because that is that. I did not know about, I was contemplating about interdependent co-arising. And this happened to any of us. The main thing is, we know about this. We know about impermanence. We know about selflessness. We know about non-duality. We know about dependent co-arising, but we don't accept them. I accept them, and my life becomes free. Go with the flow. At that time, we usually always ask, what if? What if I do this? What if I do that? If something happened before, if I did something different, would my life turn out to be different, better? That answer will never be, that question will never be answered. Because we live in a undeterministic world. Everything in our life works according to the law of interdependent co-arising. Here I have a scale of, on this way is peace, this way is happiness. And we start from point A. What determines the direction of our life? There are so many forces. Interdependent coherence says that we are the sum of our actions. And things happen like this because things like that. I come to Plumlee because I have a difficulty with my boss. So my boss is in me. Many things contribute to what happened in our life. The problem is we want our life to be deterministic, to be permanent. That's quantum Newton physics. in quantum physics, things are probabilistic, uncertain, but it works according to a certain ways. And it works according to the law of interdependent co-arising. There was a theory called chaos. It comes something like this. A butterfly from somewhere, if it flaps the wings, it can affect the weather. This theory was discovered by the meteorologists, study weather. One flap of a butterfly can affect the whole weather system of the earth. That is Avantamsaka Sutra. All in one, one in all. Interpenetration. So you see the teachings of Buddhism manifested in every way of our life. There was a young woman in India. Her name was Patakara. She was the daughter of a wealthy banker. And she was arranged to marry the son of another wealthy banker. But she fell in love with her servant. Remember, during the Buddha time. And she refused to marry that banker's son. So she ran away from home with her servant. She's happy to live with a hut and two golden hearts. That is very revolutionary. She was a wealthy class. He was a Sutra class. And when she was pregnant, she needed to go home. As a tradition, the husband was very afraid because if he returned, his parent-in-law will give him a napkin or maybe take his wife back. So he got hesitated. She went alone by herself, but gave birth along the way and came back. 2 years later, she got pregnant again. And decided to go home to give birth. This time, her husband also prepared to go with her. On the way, it was a big thunderstorm. I need to be aware of my time. And they could not cross the river, and they had to stand up on the bank of the river at night time. So he went to the forest, trying to make a tent for her, and she was about to give birth. But he was bitten by a snake, died. She didn't know it, and she got to give birth to an infant. The next day, she walking around and saw her husband die, so she knew that her husband was bitten by the snake. But she had to move on to visit her parents' family, her parents' home. The water was still very strong, and she could not carry the 2-year-old boy and a newly born baby. So she put the 2-year-old boy on the bank of the river and put her infant, the newly born baby, on the head and walk over. The water is still very strong. A hawk came down and took the child. and flew away. She cried, she shouted. And the boys in here thought that his mother was calling him. Walk over and get swept by the water. Then she crossed the riverbank and asked for direction to go to her home. And when she went home, she to the area, she was told that the big storm last night had hit her parents' home, and her parents and her brothers were also killed. She went back, walked around with ragged clothes. Everywhere she would chase away. People see she's a mad person. One day she walked near the place where the Buddha was teaching. And this group want to chase her away. So the Buddha looked and saw her coming. So he walked slowly toward her. She had never seen a person who walked that peaceful and gentle. She got her attention. So the Buddha come and say, smile to her and say, bring your mind back. She brought her mind back. The Buddha did no miracle. Remember, the Buddha had no miracle powers. And then he said, in your past life, you have gone through. And then she told the story. What happened? This Buddha said, in your past life, you have suffered much more. And you were able to overcome this by yourself. You would be able to overcome it this time. Give her words of encouragement. And they talked more, and then the Buddha ordained her as a nun and left, and she was later on become enlightened and become a very good teacher of many other nuns. And it is the story of her awakening. When they plow, she expects that when they plow their fields and sow seeds in the earth, when they care for their wives and children, young Brahmin find riches. You do something, you're supposed to get results. But why I have practiced for so long, so much, and I have not found peace? He had that question. She had that question. And then one day, she was washing her feet. The water come down. Just washing the feet, water come down, and she said, observe that. Very calmful, very mild. And she gone to bed and turned off the flame. And then she got enlightenment. She realized the peace within. So what you say about this? What is this enlightenment and this and that? What is this? It has only happened in the story. So now we come back to the topics of today. But this one is the prequel. You have heard that this retreat is kind of special retreat, that the teachings of each Dhamma talk is a sequence of talks that we cover the topic that they taught in the winter 2012, 2013. So each of us are kind of assign a topic, and so we tell it the way we like, but we have to tell the story, because that they taught us the whole 3 months. So we only have 1 day, 2 days. You will have more, so don't worry that what you want to hear have not been covered. Today I'm talking about what other practices that have come into Buddhism, and that Buddhism has adapted quite well. Or even though it's in there, Buddha have accepted and make it into the part of the traditions. But there were quite some practices that quite show some confusions, because at that time it was said the Buddha did not give proper instruction. And one of them is the practice of the 9 concentrations. It's called Sampati, Samapati. It's called about something called a concentration state that you may have already heard about, the 4 Janas and the 4 formless realms. And these teachings were taught in the heart of the teachings of the Buddha. So it was there. It was part of Buddhist teachings. But as we learned yesterday, that when the Buddha was studying and practicing, he practiced this method with 2 teachers, and he found out that these methods did not bring him to total liberation. And it was from other traditions. Then why it come in here? This one is of interest because I'm now practicing and leading retreats in Asia. And in Asia, at least in Southeast Asia, many people practice Theravada meditations. We practice the mindfulness of breathing and the 4 establishment of mindfulness. It is also Theravada traditions. So we are very much into original practices of the Buddha. And in fact, we have the practice are based on the Nikaya, the 4 establishment of mindfulness and the mindfulness of breathing. They are the 2 most practicing sutra or meditation that were available. It's like a handbook for meditation. So they were there. One time I asked about this to Thầy, because we have in a retreat and we have some discussion with the local monks. And people ask whether this one were taught by the Buddha. That's the first question. The second question is, if it's actually passed by the Buddha, is it necessary for enlightenment? Those 2 questions. So I come and ask Thầy, and Thầy said only 1 sentence. When you concentrate, you concentrate on something. There needs to be a subject and object. You just don't concentrate on nothing. There should be an object for you to concentrate. Just only 1 sentence. He didn't say that whether it was true or not, or whether it was needed or not, and it's up to me to find out. And this talk is about what I have found out. So if anything that was wrong, blame me. Don't say that it was Thầy said that. I take responsibility for this sharing. Because this one has been quite controversial. But why we need to put it here? Because It is also a part of meditations, and we heard about a lot. If later on you need to go to other countries to teach, especially to practice, Theravada meditation is something that you may need to know. So when we talk about having a subject and an object, we talk about the coexistence of the three elements of consciousness. When you talk about consciousness, it means that you're conscious of something. When we're mindful of something. When we concentrate on something, we are concentrating on something. So there should need to be a subject and an object, and what they call the wholeness, three elements. Talking about parenthood, you need to have parents and children. No parents, there could be no parenthood. No children, no parenthood either. But because it is subjective and objective, when we talk about parenthood, usually the way that we see things are more on the side of the parents. It's subjective. We look in the way that we think. So they have the sixth sutra and the sixth mantra, I am partially right. Just to say that what we see subjectively is our own point of view. But we have the right to say, just like everybody else has the right to say what they think. And when we listen without discrimination. The main point is when we listen without discrimination. When we talk about meditations, we need to concentrate on three pillars of meditations: mindfulness, concentration, and insight. Mindfulness, the Chinese character is the heart, the mind in the bottom, and the here and now in the top. So mindfulness is your mind in the here and the now. It brings your mind back to your body. Concentration is a man sitting down under a roof. He finds a roof sitting down to be still. He's not being disturbed by other things around him. That's why he can develop concentration, because he's not bothered by other things. Concentrate on the object that he would like to concentrate on. Insight, very interesting here. In the bottom is the mind, and the top is the broom. You want to develop insight, you take the broom and clear your mind. When you flush the toilet become clear, become clean. I wish that we have a flush to flush our brain, our mind. After that, it's gone. But exactly that's what it is. You clear your mind. Clear your mind out of what? Out of ignorance, of greed, of hatred. And in order to do that, you need to have mindfulness, concentration, and insight together. Insight is something it's happened to many of us. Insight is insight about something. Liberation is liberation by something. If some anger makes us sad, something makes us sad, makes us angry, we find ways to transform the anger and the sadness, and we become free. And after all this looking deeply, concentration, mindfulness, what do we get? Let's say that the Buddha sat for 49 days and he found out about the three Dharma seals. And if we sat here for 100 years, we still find out those three Dharma seals. But now the Buddha said, I already found it for you. Why didn't you use it? The best that you could do is to find out those three truths. But finding those truths and living those truths is a different story than intellectually knowing the truth, the knowledge. So the Buddha knows that. So he gave us the way of reaching and realizing these three Dharma seals. So we talk about Dharma, we talk about here. Dharma and Dhamma. Dharma with a capital D, it means that the teaching of the Buddha. The three Dharma seals with the bigger D is say that the three characteristics of the teachings of the Buddha. What did the Buddha teach? He teach about the three Dharma seals. They are impermanence, selflessness, nirvana. That's he taught. But there is another name, a meaning for Dharma. And this Dharma name, Dharma here is the letter D. And it means phenomenal. A flower is phenomenal. It's a physical and mental phenomenon. And so another meaning of the three Dharma seal is the characteristics of phenomena. And it is this characteristic of phenomena that the Buddha says it has the characteristics of impermanence, selflessness, and nirvana. Looking deeply, we will find out about these three Dharma seals. And the way to find out those three Dharma seals is to look deeply into ourselves. Where do we find liberations? Right in our body and our mind. That's how Patakara found her freedom. So in order for me to go into that 9 concentration, this one looking a bit into the working of the mind and the teachings of the 4 establishments of mindfulness will help us to understand the 9 concentration. So Buddhist psychology says that there are 8 kinds of consciousness. There's thought consciousness, there's the manas, the mind consciousness, and 5 sense consciousnesses. There are wholesome seeds, white seed here, and the black seed, unwholesome seeds. And they are what they call the universal seeds, mental formation, the 5 particular mental formations. The main thing is this, those things stay down here. And when conditions are sufficient, they come up. And they come up according to the law of interdependent co-arising. It is a random process, but it has some kind of law, some kind of patterns. Just like when you throw a coin, you got a head or tail. And you throw it long enough time, it goes to 1/2. And that's the law of throwing a coin, 1/2. It's a random process, but it has some kind of probability. So we say that the probability of getting a head when throwing a coin is 1/2. So there's some kind of certainty out of the uncertainty world. Interdependent co-arising say that if you live your life according to a certain way, we may get what we wish to have at a certain rate, but not 100%. That's why the Buddha told us to practice the 4 right diligence. Cultivating, if something bad have not arisen, do not make condition for them to come up. If they have arisen, mechanism for them to come down. Something good have not come up, mechanism for them to come up. If they have not, they have come up and stay, we make condition for them to stay there. And that's some kind of guidelines that can give us a better chance of living a life in peace and happiness. So the 5 mindfulness training is a guideline that if we practice the 5 mindfulness training, you have a much better chance of living a peaceful and happy life. It is a guideline. Of course, along the way, we can zigzag. It's okay, but as long as we go to that point. And based on this thought consciousness, mind consciousness, the manas things, the 5 sense consciousness, we have what they call the mental formations. We have good seed, we have bad seed, and we have indeterminate mental seeds. 2 of them are called initial thought and sustained thought. Initial thought is something that we pay attention to. For example, I pay attention to the flower. At first, it's a flower, so I pay attention to it. When I look deeply to the petal, to the color, and this and that, looking deeply into that more carefully is called sustained attentions. It is okay if we think about this, if we think about some good things. But if we think too much, our mind wandering around, and we think about some unwholesome thing, and that has become very tired. So most of the time in meditation, we tell people, do not think. Because 90% the time we spend on thinking are on useless things. So we say, don't think. And that's why in our practice, we had the practice of, I think 4 or 5 years ago, they gave out a say-in before the meal. Turn off your non-stop thinking radio. This is this initial thought and sustained thought. Most of the time, we concentrate our energy on thinking about useless things. Stop that thinking. And the Buddha gave us this 4 establishment of mindfulness to practice on, to look deeply into finding the way to the reality of life. When we study the Sutra on mindful breathing, we should also study this Sutra. It is a component, a companion of the awareness of mindful breathing, the awareness of breathing. It gives detail of how you practice those 4 sets of exercise. So the first one, you practice on mindfulness of the body by practicing on aware. Remember this. Mindfulness is mindfulness of something. In order for us to be mindfulness of something, we have to be mindfulness in the here and now. And the way to establish our presence in the here and now is through mindful breathing. So first, that's why in the 16 exercises of the discourse on mindful breathing, the Buddha also always say, breathing in, I am aware of something. Breathing out, I am aware of something. That breathing in and out, bring your mind back to the body. It is a prerequisite for mindfulness. And when our mind is not here, we're not mindful. That's simple. So mindfulness of something start with mindfulness of breathing. We can say without mindfulness of breathing, there is no mindfulness. Because when your mind is not with your body, how can you be mindful? My mind, when I was at the airport, were on the material of the book. That's why I did not pay attention to what happened around me. So they had this, what you call, an invitation. What are you doing, my dear? To ask us whether we are in the here and the now or not. So he told us to practice, the Buddha told us to practice aware of the whole body, positions of the body, actions of the body, parts of the body, 4 elements of body, time, space, consciousness, and dissolution of the body. So when we do the 10 mindful movements, working in the gardens, working in the kitchens, we are practicing mindfulness of the body in the body. We can be mindful in everything that we do. That's concentration, what we call mindfulness of the body in the body. The next one, he tells us to practice on pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, neutral feelings, and mixed feelings. And these feelings are based on the body and the mind. So each of these. And then we go into the states of mind. We're just aware of our desiring mind, hating, ignorance, collective, distracted. These are our mental states that mostly shown in our body, through our body. So when we are aware of our body, we can be aware of our mind. And remember that all this exercise always tell us to go back to ourselves, bring peace and happiness to our body, to our feelings, concentrate our mind, make our mind happy, liberate our mind. So we are in a state of awareness, but peaceful and calm. We are relaxed. Then we go into the area of looking deeply into ourselves. Looking deeply into ourselves of what? We have get connected to our body, our feelings, our mental formations. Now looking into the way of we look at things. The way we look at things is called perceptions. And the objects that we look, it manifests in our mind, depend on our perceptions. So the objects of mind, the establishment on the objects of mind is the establishments on our perceptions and how we look at things. And most of the time, we look at things in a very wrong way. Because of the manas. So, the Buddha say, okay, you need to go to look deeply into things that bother you, that are the obstructive to your practice, to your peace. So he lists out a few things. 5 hindrances, the 5 aggregate of clingings here. Here we have some misunderstanding. At that time, there was thinking of our 5 aggregates. are a source of suffering. But the Buddha said, no, they are just your body, your feeling, your mental formations, your perception. They are not the source of your suffering. The source of thing is that you are clinging to the things that were in there. They just happen the way they are. And why do you blame them? When we see something beautiful, we attach to them. It's our way of looking that we attach to them. Not because of the eyes, not because of the ears, of the nose. So it's mostly a mental process. So the Buddha told us to look deeply into the mind, to the eyes, and the object of the eye is the form, and look into the eye's consciousness, what they call the 18 realms. I will not go into the detail, but I need this for the next part. And then it talk about the 7 factors of awakening, 4 noble truths, and 8-fold noble path. The main thing is this: when we practice the 4 establishments of mindfulness, and help us to look deeply into ourselves, not outside, totally aware in this body, in these feelings, in these mental formations, perceptions, and consciousness, we would be able to find out some very interesting things. And those things are phenomenal, are impermanence. They don't have a selfless self. They don't have a self. And they are non-duality. They do not have the characteristic of discriminating, coming, going, birth, death, failure, success, ugly, beautiful. Duality point of view, it means that a view that discriminates. Non-duality point of view is not a view that do not discriminate. Equanimity. So equanimity usually equates with letting go of ideas. And that is a liberation that the Buddha realized after he sat under the tree, Bodhi tree, for 49 days. The 4 noble truths and the noble eightfold path are the means for him to go to that realization. What these teachings have to do with helping Patakara heal? I don't think we could find any worse tragedy than what happened with Patakara. But she will heal and she become enlightened. Because she realized that how the way phenomena are. She lost her families. She joined the order of nuns. She had a whole new family. So the things that were lost are now found. But she found her peace. And she practiced looking deeply into herself. Why was she able to bring her mind back when the Buddha said, bring your mind back? A mad person come into the clinic and the psychologist said, bring your mind back. The main thing was she had been used to the circumstances of everywhere she went, she was pushed away. So she expected that. But now, when she walked to this and the Buddha came, something different, something new. Just like when we were walking under the sun, very hot, and just a drop of water come in, drop, and we say, oh, it's maybe raining. Just only one drop of water. Contact attentions. And then feelings. This man did not chase me away. He's gentle. So they were given compassionate nectar. It calmed her down. Didn't think anything. But she concentrated on this person, on this peaceful walk, lovely smile, gentle looking eyes. She was intensely concentrated. Even in that scenario. So the Buddha told her, bring your mind back. She brought her mind back. Because she already peaceful. She already embraced by that love. But even she was mad, but she was really be aware of what she see, what she hear, what she touch. You have to be in touch with your 5 sense organs. You have to be in touch with 5 aggregates, and you have to find your peace, your happiness right there. You cannot find them anywhere else. Breathing in, I know that I only have 30 minutes left. May I ask for 15 minutes to 11:45 to finish the talk? So you just need to prepare because of the early preparations. Because this talk, that the detail that I'm giving now is a way for me to explain how jhanas work. So you see that the Buddha, when he taught, he had this 37 helping Dharma to support our practice. And he had quite a few elements of mindfulness in there. The 4 establishment of mindfulness, 5 faculty, 5 powers, 7 factors of mindfulness, 8 noble fold paths. Mindfulness plays a very important role in our practice. And it is because of the mind, in the here and the now, that we can aware. This is what Thầy meant by he said, when you concentrate, you have to concentrate on something. Jhana, when you're in that mode, you don't have an object to concentrate. That's how he gave me the answer. You have to concentrate on something. There should be an object for you to concentrate on. But why this come out? They have caused a lot of confusions. In Buddhism, we talk about 3 realms of 9 stages. We talk about rebirth and realm for us to be reborn in. Remember, they are just mental states. When we're angry, we say that we'll be reborn into the realm of hell or animals. So there are realms that we can be reborn in: hell, hungry ghosts, animals, or in the realm of gods. Animals, hungry ghosts are for the mental state that we are quite angry, sad, jealousy. Gods are the realm that we can be happy. And there are higher realms that different level of happiness that you can be reborn in. So they're just a metaphor of mental state. Just like I think Pope John Paul II, he said, hell is not a physical state. It is a mental state. Same thing here. The God, the realms are just mental states. Happen again. I have to come back to the test. But before it begins, let us sing a song, The Realm of the Mind. The realm of the mind is mine. I can choose where I want to be. Both heaven and hell I know equally well. The choice is up to me. So wherever your mind is your home. You can be in hell realms or heavenly realms. It's up to you. That's the meaning of this high sphere. And so when I look deeply into this, what they call this jhana state, what it means is this, they have said in the teachings, in the heart of the Sutra, and also the heart of the Buddha teachings, and the awakening of the heart. He said that these teachings were from other traditions, but you go adopt it later. Because the Buddha practiced it and learned it during when he studied with the two teachers, and did not lead him to liberations. Now, given that, the main thing is, if actually taught by the Buddha, what does it do? These are questions. I think I may have to turn it off and on again. Let's see what happens. The main thing was jhana as defined as a concentrated state that helps us to burn the defilement, something bad in our mind, help us to burn them. And the way that it was practiced was to get into a concentrated mode. You deeply absorbed in that object. Okay. Okay, I think I know what happened. I put it on sleep mode. So it was what it does is just concentration. You need to concentrate on an object, and it had to go through several stages. And it gave our very good method, not a very clear method to attain it. First, you have to prepare yourself morally, practicing the 5 mindfulness training. Don't drink, stop, go to a retreat center. Prepare yourself for the experience. And you have to find a very good teachers that can support you and choose the object of meditation for you. And you will find a very safe grounding place. And you need to have the teacher with you to guide you. Because this kind of meditation puts you a very absorptive state. When you're in this mode, you are not aware of anything around you. And in order for you to get into this concentration, you have to be able to see a sign. For example, the teacher gives you some color disc to concentrate on. You concentrate on that, and in your mind, there's a sign that slowly happens in your mind. And there are some factors that coming in that will neutralize the 5 hindrances, which are what they call the sloth, torpor, restlessness, those kind of defilement that cannot help you to concentrate. And you have to be, and after that, that sign become a very clear image in your mind. You cannot see that with your eyes. You have to see it with your mental faculty. And when it becomes very clear, you will fully absorb in that mental state. And the 5 hindrances, the defilement that keep you concentrating, will be suppressed. The main thing is to suppress your mind, to suppress your shortcoming, like what they call the 5 hindrances. And you can be there for a long time. One quality, that strength quality that distinguishes jhana from other experiences is that within jhanas, all the 5 senses are totally shut down. One cannot see, hear, smell, taste, or feel touch. One cannot hear a crowd calling or a person coughing. To close all those senses. That's what they call absorptions. Shut out. So, I look into Thay's teaching. You have to concentrate on something. What are these channels they concentrated on? You totally shut down. And how can we find peace and happiness if you have nothing to concentrate, to contemplate on? It is authentic Buddhist teachings. The Buddha, the Nikaya have some story related to this. Back then there was this man who walked over and he met the Buddha. But the Buddha was on his dying time there near Nirvana. And he said, there was this teacher who had developed the practice of not seeing with eyes, not hearing with ears, very deep concentration. And he was awake. And the Buddha said that I can have that capacity too. One time there was a big thunderstorm. Some people were killed, some animals were killed. And I was there. I did not hear anything. I did not see anything. That's one sutra said. But there was another sutra said, there was this time the Buddha asked a person, what did your teacher teach? Did he teach you about the developments of the 5 faculties? He said, yes. He taught me hear nothing with my ears, see nothing with the eyes. The Buddha said that in that case, the deaf and the blind can have the high development of the faculties. So what's the difference is that if you don't hear, you don't see. What's different between the deaf and a blind person? So there was some conflict, and it was analyzed that these teachings properly were brought in through the Jainism or the Aperture practice. They practiced Asceticism to stop all activity. And the Buddha said, in that case, you want to get into this mode because you want to avoid your suffering. There's a better way. You practice equanimity. If you see something, you hear something that is not pleasant, or something both pleasant and unpleasant, think about its arising, its duration, and its dissolution. Come and go, and practice not to have an attachment to them or an aversion to them, equanimity. And that's how you should practice development of the 5 faculties. So the Buddha totally rejected this practice of concentration that you don't get into the awareness of your 5 sense organs and the 5 aggregates. But there was some benefit for people to get into this mode. When it was so painful and they need to get not in contact, just in concentration, they can lessen the pain for a period of time and then they come back and get in touch with real life. And practice development of looking deeply into our 5 aggregates. I looked into other teachers, and there was one. This topic is quite controversial. Many people don't agree. I don't want to get into this controversy, but at least this one is another point of view. And one said that this one, many teachers don't agree on this, even the Theravada scholars. They have many different ideas. But there was this teacher, he called Banterji. He said on his PhD research, he said that because the practice of jhana starts with the aim of suppression, your 5 hindrances, it was designed with that purpose. That's why these practices are not needed and sufficient for total liberation, because it was designed for only concentration to suppress the defilement. But if we also combine mindfulness, concentration, and insight together, then you can get total liberation. And that's what they call supramundane jhana. The first jhana was only in concentration, and it was specifically designed to get into that absorption mode. The supramundane jhana is to be awake, to be aware of what's happening in front of you, in you, around you. And it needs concentration, mindfulness, and insight. So we finally come back to the practice of meditations, of mindfulness, concentration, and insight. In Theravada literatures, it was stressed that the supramundane wisdom, supramundane jhana, which are needed for liberations. And how do you practice this supramundane jhana? The 4 establishments of mindfulness. Because it involves mindfulness, concentration, insight. Look deeply into the 5 articles and find out the 3 Dharma seals. And so what do Plum village do with this practice? Do we practice jhanas here? Jhana means meditation, jhana. And when it was applied into the practice of jhana, absorption here, it was meant to use this concentration state to be in absorption mode, to suppress the defilement. And in that defilement, you totally have in a bliss. Bliss is defined as happiness that happens regarding of external circumstances. Joy is something that a source of happiness for you. For example, if you were thirsty and you see there around there's a well, and then just the thought of seeing that well is enough to make you joy. And when you're over there, you actually drink the water, it's called happiness. Bliss, it doesn't matter. You are thirsty, you are whatever, you are in a bliss. And it is this bliss that I have to read his cautious word on this. There are many meditation students who have practiced for many years and who have failed to attain the 4 jhanas, think they do not have the capacity to realize awakening. There are others who stray into unhealthy meditation practices and lose all peace of mind just because they want to so much to enter 4 jhanas. It can be harmful if you don't have a teacher to teach you. So don't practice this without a good teacher with you. So it doesn't, do we have to get into a mode of a bliss like that to forget to deal with our suffering? So what I say, no, you have other ways. And that other way is when you have defilement, when you have something that bothers you. For example, if you're angry and the source of anger is that situations, that circumstances, move away, try something else. For example, if you are quarreling with your partner, and you know that if you keep saying, you go to a fight, so you move away. You don't fight, you don't talk anymore. You stay seclusion from that defilement, and that seclusion bring you peace and happiness. We come here for 5 days, we practice. We temporarily leave everything behind. We're not running away. We find our peace and calm here, and when we come back, we can deal with life. But the fact that we are here is already enough to make us peace and happy. So it is a practice that you can get peace and happiness from letting go of your worries. And that the peace and happiness come from concentration, from mindfulness, from insight. And they here when you are totally aware of what's happening around you. This question come to me because in a retreat, we have so many over there. When I go to teach in Malaysia and also in Vietnam, they say that for some time, why they have sat for so long and they could not get into the jhana. So I didn't know what it was. So I began to look. And so the main thing is this: we have so many traditions. How do we know what traditions that we should follow? There's one guideline. If that tradition brings you peace and happiness and help you to transform pain and suffering, go for it. If somebody here walk on his two hands and he's so happy, he's so peaceful, he can transform his pain and suffering, I will go and study with him. But we want to make sure whether those practices actually bring peace and happiness or not. Does it mean that all Plumlee practitioners have peace and happiness and transform pain and suffering? I think we need to be humble. When I first get in touch with the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the Sutra, for 9 years, I did not understand the 4, the mind, the objects of mind. Until it was explained that it were perceptions. I practiced it. I was happy. I got that aha moment. But it was only at that time. I did not think about any other things. I accept them. But my defilement are still there. I have to constantly transform them. It is a continuous process. That's why the Buddha, after he get enlightenment, he keep practicing. He was at times angry. He was at times sad, and left his Sangha for 3 months because his Sangha were fighting. But he did not hide from pain and suffering. He found a solution and come back. Give the Buddha the chance to be human. Don't idolize him. Give me a chance to forget, to miss the plane. Give the doctor a chance to be sick. Many don't accept doctor to be sick. And doctors are among those who do not have time to take care of their health. Give psychologists the chance to be mentally ill. Don't put a name and label on them. That's the practice of non-duality. Don't be caught in the form and the label. And so the practice of Plumlee, basically, when we talk about meditation practices, concentrate on the mindfulness of breathing and the 4 establishments of mindfulness. They should be our, what you call, handbooks. We need to study how the mind works and practice the 5 mindfulness trainings. They are our guiding light. It will help us to go less zigzag. It can help us to go into that direction. Thầy was, when he was still teaching actively, when most of in the early years, he was what we call a father mood, and father need to teach his children in a certain way, and at that time he teach in a quite strict way. One time I came back from Deer Park, and as a procedure, I would have to make an announcement to the Sangha. I was a technical person, so I did not know much about the procedures. So I come, I prostrate, I do the procedures, and then he say, "You didn't do it right. Learn how to do it right." Right in front of the assembly hall, where everybody was looking at me. One sister said, "Brother Phap Kham, when I saw you there, my heart kept beating." I said that if I were you, I would find a way to disappear into the earth. I say, "So what? If I was wrong, the teacher taught. That was good for me." So 8 months later, I have a chance to go to Deer Park and lead a group of brothers and sisters to go with me. I asked, "Hey, should I do this procedure again?" "It's up to you." I did it, and he sat at the bell, and he just smiled. The main thing is, don't be afraid of your mistakes. Be truthful to yourself in the practice. If things don't work for you, say that it doesn't work for you. But you are only one who can tell whether the practice is helping you or not. So this is why when I talk about this concentrated state, it's just only the mental state. And I can go to, if I have peace and I have concentration, I have mindfulness, I have insight, I can be in that mental state anytime I want. Remember, the realm of the mind is mine, I can choose. So we need to respect all the traditions, even Plumlee traditions. If something that you practice that is not beneficial to you, you can question it. Plumlee is not arrogant about its practice. Don't give it a name. I practice Plumlee, therefore I am good. Don't say that we are Thai students, we are good. Because it is only us who know. And through my experience, I know the practice have helped me to bring peace and happiness. And cultivate my peace and happiness, transform my pain and suffering, and I can live a quite healthy life. And that's the measure that you need to be aware of. We will end now with 3 sounds of the bell.